And this morning, we're asking you, how are you stretching your money during this COVID-19 season? How are you stretching your coin during this COVID-19 season? We'd love to hear from you through our hashtag New Normal. You can also call us, you can send us a message, and you can also reach us via WhatsApp. But before we do all of that, now in less than 6 months, COVID-19 infections around the world have passed the 7.5 million mark. Let's look at the numbers in detail. So globally, at the moment as we speak, 7,596,987 people have been confirmed positive for COVID-19 around the world. Out of this, 3,841,493 people have recovered from COVID-19, while sadly we've lost 423,844 people so far to the disease. That's around the world. Let's move on to Kenya, and this is the situation so far. 3,215 people confirmed positive for COVID-19. Of these, 1,092 people in Kenya have so far recovered, while those who've died, the figure stands at 92. That's Kenya. Across the East African region, starting with Somalia, which is next to us in terms of numbers, 2,513 people confirmed positive for COVID-19 in Somalia. Of these, 532 have recovered, and in Somalia, 85 people have so far been reported to have died as a result of the disease. Our neighbor to the west is Uganda. Their numbers stand at so far 679 people confirmed positive as at this moment. 161 people have recovered, and so far Uganda has not reported anyone to have died from the disease. That's Uganda. Moving across to Tanzania, these figures have not changed for a long time. They still stand at 509 people in Tanzania confirmed positive for COVID-19. 183 people have recovered. 21 people so far reported dead from the disease in Tanzania. In Rwanda, the figure stands at 494 people who have been confirmed positive for COVID-19. 313 people in Rwanda have recovered, and they've so far reported 2 people to have died. And one more, Burundi, again part of the East African community. Burundi, 85 people have been confirmed positive so far for COVID-19. 45 people have recovered, and 1 person has so far reported to have been to have died in Burundi. So that's the situation in Kenya, in the East African region, and around the world as far as COVID-19 numbers is concerned. Now, this week, many Kenyans went back to a full-day work schedule after the government adjusted the nighttime curfew hours to start from 9 p.m. and end at 4 a.m. While the adjustment is a relief to many businesses that have been forced to cut down daily work hours to enable their employees beat the curfew, the extension of other COVID-19 restrictions means that the economy will still continue to struggle.
With more companies closing shop, millions of people losing their jobs, and consumers on survival mode, the economy badly needed to get back on the move, and all eyes were on one man.
I know we all want to open up at the earliest opportunity and get our economy going.
But in the end of an afternoon of disappointments, there was one certain positive.
The commencement time for the same shall be varied from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m.
This means more working hours for businesses both in the formal and informal sectors of the economy that had been forced to cut down on their daily operations to allow their workers to beat the curfew. The extension of the cessation of movement into and out of Mombasa and Nairobi and the ban on public gatherings means other sectors and subsectors of the economy, such as the events and entertainment industry, will continue taking a beating from the pandemic. The tourism industry, which contributes about 8% of the country's gross domestic product (GDP), will however remain the biggest casualty.
International travel restrictions are hereby extended. In the meantime, the Ministry of Transport is directed within 7 days from the date hereof, to engage all key stakeholders and develop protocols and guide resumption of local air travel.
From a vibrant economy that was earlier projected to grow by at least 6% this year, analysts now warn that Kenya's economic growth could slow down to between 1% and 2%. Victor Kiprop, NTV.
The National Treasury has unveiled a 3 trillion shilling budget focusing largely on economic recovery and cushioning the population from the ravages of the prevailing coronavirus pandemic. Aware that keeping the population alive and spurring economic activity are the key priorities of the moment, Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani has laid out an expenditure plan for multi-billion shilling economic stimulus package, whose endgame is to put money in your pocket. Lilian Kiari reports.
Jumpstarting an economy ravaged by the COVID-19 pandemic is top on the government's priority list. The man holding brief at Treasury presented his maiden speech in a somewhat empty chamber of parliament.
In this regard, the National Treasury is re-engineering.
In the 3.2 trillion shillings aggregate budget, where 2.7 trillion is the recurrent budget, 56.6 billion shillings has been set aside to cushion vulnerable Kenyans and businesses, particularly those affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. The key 8 areas where the government will be focusing on are infrastructure, education, health, tourism, environment, water and sanitation, manufacturing, agriculture and food security, and injecting liquidity into businesses.
Mr. Speaker, in order to de-risk lending to the micro, small and medium enterprise, I have set aside shilling 3 billion seed capital to operationalize the credit guarantee scheme. The scheme will enable the provision of affordable credit in an efficient and structured manner.
To stimulate the agriculture sector, 3 billion shillings will go towards subsidizing farm inputs.
I have also allocated 3.5 billion for expanded community household irrigation. These will caution farmers from the adverse effects of weather and further secure food supply chains. Further, Mr. Speaker, I have set aside 1.5 billion to assist flower and horticultural farmers to access international market during this period when we are experiencing low cargo traffic in and out of the country.
5 billion shillings will go towards rehabilitation of damaged access roads and footbridges. 10 billion shillings has also been allocated for the Kazi Mtaani program. 712 million shillings has been allocated to provide credit for micro, small and medium enterprises in the manufacturing sector.
To cushion the vulnerable in our society, particularly the emerging urban vulnerable, the government provided an additional shilling 10 billion to boost the ongoing traditional current cash transfer program. Similarly, the government allocated shilling 1 billion to recruit health workers to strengthen the health capital capacity of the Ministry of Health, while allocating shilling 400 million for food and non-food commodities for affected households.
And once again, the CES directed ministries, departments and agencies to clear all pending bills, failure to which funding will be withheld. Ukur Yatani's first budget speech comes at a time when the economy has been brutally battered by the COVID-19 pandemic, locust invasion and ravaging floods. Ukur now says that the economy is projected to grow at 2.5%, which is a drop from the 5.4% which had been projected last year. Lilian Kiari, NTV.
Okay, so this morning we want to focus on money, your money, how to stretch it as far as possible. We'll be getting into the detail of the budget and how it affects you and your hustle in a moment. But first, let me introduce my panel, starting with here in the studio. We've got Mr. John Nyangi, who is the head of research at the Institute of Public Finance. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, and also on our 5th floor newsroom studio, we've got Agnes Nonsizi, who's a media personality and music publicist. Agnes, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome. Now, we are also joined by Daniel Ndirango via Zoom. He is the head of programs at the Institute of Public Finance. Daniel, good morning.
Good morning.
And we also have Mary Kitaka. Mary is a clinical psychologist and from True North. Mary, good morning. We'll see whether she can hear me in a moment. We're also joined by Martin Kimathi, who is a presenter of NTV's Hustle Yangu show, which is starting this weekend. So that's my panel. And as we sort out, Mary, can you hear me at all now? Not yet. Okay, we will come back to you in a moment. But first of all, let me come to Daniel to first of all help us with the budget, which is from that report by our colleague Lillian and also Kiprop earlier on. What were the highlights in terms of how this budget affects people?
Hello.
Right. Many thanks, John. I think one of the pronouncements greatly was on economic recovery, just looking at how we can adjust from the impact that the COVID-19 has had on the economy. You've had the CS for National Treasury talking about a stimulus package, focused mostly on small businesses, speaking to health, speaking to infrastructure, and also recruitment. So I think the key highlight was looking at how we are going to go beyond the impact of COVID-19. But basically, also there's a key question to that of how this will be financed, how we'll be funding all these expenses, given the tax amendments that have happened, as well as the implication that this has had on businesses, as much as also the job losses that we've encountered and experienced widely.
Okay.
And that is a key question, yeah.
Thank you for that, Ndirango. Now, but there's a stimulus package which is meant to help businesses revive. But on the other hand, they've also imposed a tax across all business. I think it stands at 1%.
Sorry, I missed you there.
I'm saying while you're giving the stimulus package, they're also imposing a 1% tax across board.
Yes, true. Actually, there's a 13 billion for SMEs, 10 billion which is to be used to pay the the current pending bills. And I think that has been an ongoing conversation for a while, as regarding pending bills for small businesses that the government holds. But also the 3 billion that will be injected directly to small and medium-term enterprises. On the other hand, you've seen the government introduce a minimum tax that is at 1% to be charged on gross. And I think at this particular time, there's a lot of losses that businesses will be experiencing because of how even the change in clientele, the mode of doing businesses. The people who the only people who are purchasing are most likely the people who know you for small businesses because of the fear of contamination and all that. So the government charging the 1% on gross, I think that is an undoing of what they're already trying to do on the other side, trying to promote businesses. At the same time, charging not taxing not on profits. But 1% on gross. I think that is that's one of the undoing on these current amendments that they are pushing forward.
Now, John, you're also an economist yourself. Was there any good news for people who are running side hustles, not actually side hustles, but small businesses?
Yeah, to some extent there's good news, and also there is the bad news side. For example, what you've just had a conversation with Ndirango. Here on the other side, the government has made available 3 billion for the small, medium enterprises. But on the other side, again, has imposed a 1% tax. The principle of taxation is that its ability to pay. If you're able to pay, then you should pay tax. But if you don't have income, then there's no reason why you should pay tax. And that is why you see when there is you file returns, zero tax, zero returns because you have zero income. Here you have 1% which is levied on gross, not caring whether you have made profit or you have not made profit. Even if you have made 1,000 shillings, and that is the gross, which may not have any profit. Maybe it's the loan you're paying or is the sales. You're required to deduct it further, 1%, and pay tax. So even what the government has given to SMEs could not have that desired outcome. Secondly, Wanawarungu, you know, when we talk of these businesses, our economy main economy in sub-Saharan Africa and basically in Kenya are driven by these small businesses. Because, for example, in the most recent jobs in 2019, around 747 jobs, 767 jobs were created in this economy of ours. And 90% of these jobs were within these small businesses. So this is where the jobs are, this is where the people are working, which should not be pressed.
The government argues that with this 1% tax on gross income, it's to try and arrest those companies or organizations who consistently declare they didn't make any profit, therefore no tax to pay. But that's like punishing everybody, assuming everybody doesn't pay tax.
Look at the approach. It is the government's failure to make sure there is no tax evasion. So they have left some loopholes where some unscrupulous businessmen or business enterprises are able to evade tax. So instead of sealing those loopholes through which some legally businesses who are supposed to pay taxes evade, then they are applying a blanket tax.
So in one word, is this a budget that is friendly to people who run small businesses?
To a larger extent, it is not good news to these people.
Okay. Agnes, good morning and welcome to Your World again.
Good morning.
Now, I know you are also an entrepreneur. When the taxman, the KRA person comes and says, I need 1% of everything you make in a year, what does that mean for you?
It means that, yeah, I have to pay tax because the government has said that. But clearly, the budget is not working very well for us because even before the COVID-19, it was a very, since 2019, towards the end of 2019, it was a very bad year, especially in the entertainment industry where we are in. Already the entertainment space is struggling on its own because there are no structures per se, and let's not go into the conversation of the royalties in this country. So for us, it was a bad year in 2019, and then now came COVID-19, and now there's the 1% tax to pay. So whether I make profit or not, I have to pay. And let's even start with the conversation of, am I gonna get business in the first place? Because how we make our money, for example, how I make my profit or how I earn money is when an artist releases music and I have the I have to promote them, or rather I have to do PR for them because I do music PR. So we are looking at artists, they were stretched. So when they were already stretched right now, someone is thinking, am I going to spend my last coin on paying a publicist, or am I going to spend my last coin on paying rent and figuring out how I'm going to cater for my food? So we are actually at the conversation, is there business in the first place? And then now again, we have to pay tax.
Okay, Agnes, we'll come back to you for more about your story. Mary, I'm hoping now technology can allow us to say good morning and you can hear me.
Good morning.
Okay, welcome to this conversation. You're a psychologist, but I wonder how has COVID-19 affected your own personal world?
Thank you very much, Joseph. You know, when us as human beings, when the order of life as we know it is threatened, one of the things that can happen is we feel fearful. And there are many other emotions that negative emotions that we can feel, and these are the contributors to the stress that people are experiencing. So because we are feeling fearful, we are uncertain of what's going to happen in the future. We are worried. Some people are even sad because they've lost their jobs. Some people are angry. Maybe you're angry at an employer who let you go. If you're the breadwinner in your family, this can even create something like shame, where you're ashamed that you're unable to provide for your family anymore. So those are some of the negative emotions that people may be experiencing at this time, and for sure the stress that was there before has definitely gone up for many people.
Okay. Now, Martin, welcome to the show again. Now, you will soon be on air with a new show about business. What did you make of this budget? Anything that you picked up?
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you for having me. I think my sentiments is more of the same with everyone on the panel, because it looks good on paper. Stimulus is always good for businesses, especially for startups and SMEs. But when you come to the ground, things are really different, because number one, there's no market currently. As we speak, everybody is wondering how will we bounce back. And I think the government should, first of all, start by highlighting these issues. How will they make the playing field a bit more favorable to startups and SMEs before even giving out stimulus and asking people to return the money with a 1% tax? So the policies have to be right first before the government can start charging people.
Conversations with entrepreneurs, especially young entrepreneurs, what are their concerns? What are their challenges?
Basically, the challenges is the same. Number one is capital. And for those people who have managed to gain capital, most of them, they get capital from outside donors. So you can see where the challenge comes. Not everyone has access to outside donors. So I can say capital, and also policies when it comes to getting licenses, or how do you even file back returns. A lot of startups, they don't know that, especially kids from the slums. They don't know how to go about even with filing returns or even registering a company. So I think first we start with policies. Those are the biggest challenge: capital and policies.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Now let's see what your show is going to be all about starting this weekend.
Our guest today is the first Kenyan fashion designer to be featured in Vogue magazine.
Hand wash was getting sold out, sanitizers were getting sold out, masks were getting sold out, and then I'm like, what about the people that live in Kibera? Right now, we're giving out like more than 7,000 for free, all for free. Maybe in Runda there, you had gone to dance somewhere, and then somebody's phone get lost. The first people are like, yo, this guy from Kibera.
Okay, so Martin, just a taster of what to expect on Sunday. What more can you tell us about the show?
So basically, the show is about telling stories of young Kenyans, young Kenyan hustlers, entrepreneurs. Behind every success story, there's a loss, there's lessons, and there's wins. So Tuzidi na Hustle is more of telling the people of how business is shaping up in the country. For example, in one of the episodes, you'll get to see how young people are constructing houses through portable bricks. It's something that back in the day, people will never imagine. So the show is more, we tell our own stories at the same time highlighting what kind of businesses are we doing in order to generate wealth. Okay,
great, Martin. Stay with us. Now, Mr. Ndirango, let me come back to you if you can hear me. We are in a lot of debt, and you said you don't know how the government is going to finance this budget. Where are they actually going to find the money? Mr. Ndirango, you can hear me?
Yes. So, well, it's the $1 million question on where the government is going to get the money, because, like we had mentioned, the debt repayment is quite high, at about 900 billion. We are also anticipating an expenditure an additional expenditure of the county or the funds to the county government. We have the recurrent budget for the government, and our revenues are most likely going to go down. A very generous estimate will give it at 1.2 trillion because 31st of March of this financial year, the government had collected 1.2 trillion, translating to about should be about 70% of the annual target. But moving forward, it will be much more difficult for the government to raise that amount of money, given the business environment that we are seeing, as well as the tax amendments that have been made on the coming financial year, to mean that we have very little operating space. Our financial ability is much more shaken than it was in the previous year. We are paying more to international and external and internal and domestic debts, but we also want to caution businesses. We want to develop. We want to recover. All those things require money in one form or the other, and it will be very difficult for the government to raise that amount of money within the current atmosphere or the current business environment that we are operating in. So it would be very useful if the government could at least negotiate the debt repayment for external partners, because again, for domestic partners, that domestic funders, that would mean that you also, trying to shake the economy locally. But for the external funders, which is about repayment of about 500 billion, that could at least be worked out and see how we can save up on that money and invest it towards a recovery of our economy, because the economy itself may not be able to sustain that level of expenditure. So it is
Thank you, Mr. Ndirango. I'll come back to you in a moment. But as you talk about where government is finding the money, after the unveiling of the new budget comes the challenge, as you say there, of raising the money required to fund the programs and initiatives laid out in the expenditure plan. And it comes at a time of reduced economic output, as Ndirango there points out. The National Treasury is now proposing a new raft of tax measures, largely targeting small and medium-sized businesses, which it hopes will contribute some close to 39 billion shillings. Victor Kiprop has details.
About 40 minutes after 2 o'clock this afternoon, National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani walked down the stairs of the National Treasury headquarters wearing a big smile. A quick photo opportunity, and then to Parliament buildings for his historic first budget presentation to Parliament.
The financial year 2020-21 budget responds to the current challenges facing Kenyans, businesses and the economy at large in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. It's in this context that we have chosen the theme for this budget as stimulating the economy to safeguard livelihoods, jobs, businesses, and industrial recovery. In the financial year 2020-21, county governments have been allocated Kenya shilling 369.9 billion, which comprises 1. Kenya shilling 316.5 billion as equitable share, Kenya shilling 13.7 billion as additional conditional allocation from the national government, Kenya shilling 30.2 billion being external loans and grants, and Kenya shilling 9.4 billion from the Roads Maintenance Levy Fund.
But how will the government finance this 2.7 trillion shillings budget amid stagnated revenues, a narrowing fiscal space, and amid a coronavirus pandemic that has decimated the tax base and rendered thousands jobless? While the National Treasury projects that ordinary revenues will stand at 1.63 trillion shillings, the Parliamentary Budget Office projects that revenues could go below 1.5 trillion shillings. The country will once again be forced to borrow an extra 840 billion shillings from the domestic and external markets, exerting more pressure on the country's already constrained fiscal space.
Our chosen fiscal consolidation plan has been adversely affected by the events over the last 6 months. In this respect, we are now targeting a fiscal deficit of 8.3% of GDP in financial year 2019-2020. To achieve these targets, we will continue to contain growth in non-core recurrent spending and enhance our efforts in revenue mobilization. In this respect, we shall closely monitor the economic impact of COVID-19, and once the economy recovers, we'll review our fiscal plan, including tax measures, to strengthen public finances to sustainably fund our development agenda.
In this financial year, the government is targeting to raise 38.9 billion shillings from a raft of new tax measures that will now see loss-making farms pay 1% minimum tax on their gross turnover, while farms offering digital services will now pay a 1.5% tax levied on the value of the transaction. Victor Kiprop, NTV.
Honour members.
Now, John, when you watch that and the CS says the theme of the budget is to stimulate the economy, how do you do that when most of our sectors are down? We're dealing with a public health emergency. How exactly do you do that without taxing people to death?
Where government gets money is from the people.
Yeah.
It's from the ordinary revenue, which is basically from the taxes. So when the government has to fund, has to stimulate the economy, it has to get money from the same economy to stimulate the same economy. But now has to find the balance. And that is what even the CS Treasury is admitting, that it is tricky. You had him saying about the objective of fiscal consolidation. In the medium term, that is the 3 years, the government had an objective of implementing some fiscal consolidation programs. That means taking measures aimed at reducing our fiscal deficit. But he's saying this one has failed. In the previous financial year, the one that we are concluding June 30th, our fiscal balance, that is the difference between our expenditure and our revenue, was 7.3% of our GDP. But this one now is 8% of GDP, which means there's more borrowing. You can see that we are borrowing. We have estimated that in 2020-2021, we will borrow 900 billion. And we will spend, we will borrow 840 billion, and we will spend 900 billion to repay the debt. If you find that balance, borrow 900, and then out of that 900 billion, spend 840 to repay that debt. It's like a zero-sum game. So where is the difference? So that means that money is going to be repaid from our income, from our revenues, from taxes.
Is there capacity, though, to raise that kind of money from an economy that's really, from people who are really struggling?
There is a big challenge. Let me show you how this is a big challenge. Up to the 31st of March this year, we had collected 1.2 trillion. And we didn't have this
before
COVID.
Corona.
Yes. So that was like the best case scenario. So from April, May, we've been hit, shut down. Our hospitality sector, the aviation, the eateries, all of them. And those are the ones that really give money to the government. So that is a high, very ambitious to say we can even afford the 1.2 trillion. So where is this money going to come from?
Okay.
It's big, quite ambitious.
That's the answer that Yatani has got to find. Now, Mary, let me come to you for a human perspective to this budget. You, I know, have spent in your work as a psychologist, even speaking to people who have been, maybe who've lost their jobs and incomes. What kind of stories have you been hearing from people who have suffered the effects of a really terrible economy? What stories are they saying to you?
It's a very sad state of affairs. most of them express the sadness they feel about what is happening. They are worried about how they are going to be able to take care of their families. And this is taking a toll on their health, not just even their mental health, but even their physical health. So you find that if someone was already struggling with a certain illness, that illness is exacerbated by this situation. And even one of the things that is also happening, people have become afraid to the point where they are forgetting to get their checkups done at a facility, at a health facility. Some of it is stemming from the fear of contracting COVID in a health institute, in a health facility. So there's fear going on all around, and this fear is also combined with sadness and even grief. Some people are grieving for maybe their relatives who have passed away, and they've not been able to take care of a funeral the way they'd normally do. Rituals have been really affected, weddings, funerals, and these are very important things in our human lives. So you find that we've been completely interrupted, not just financially, but even just the other things that keep life that make life what life is.
And so,
And
Mary,
that's in addition to even the financial strain that people are feeling.
And so, Mary, when someone comes to you, they've just received a letter from their employer that your services, unfortunately, will no longer be required. It's not something they were expecting. It's a sudden decision to downsize. What do you normally say to such person who's received such a letter?
So in the beginning, it's to just allow them to feel all these things that are not so pleasant. I think there's a misunderstanding about what we do as psychologists in terms of giving advice. What we do is try to walk the journey with people, even in their pain. So it may not be so much as to say something to them, but it's to walk with them in this journey that is very difficult, to be able to listen to them and to be able to understand their pain. And also, whenever it's appropriate along the journey, to be able to give them some guidelines of what options could be helpful in terms of how they could proceed in the things that are coming up in their life. And maybe what we do is we also offer some things that they can do and some things that that may not be so helpful. For example, a lot of people who have lost their jobs will use something like alcohol to cope. And we know that that is not a good way to cope. So we usually also explore the ways that people can cope with this difficult situation, so that they are not digging a bigger hole than the one they already find themselves in. Yeah.
Thank you, Mary. Agnes, let me turn to you because you've experienced this journey. What's your story? Because I know things became a bit shaky for you when you were working on TV. Can you share your story?
Yes, definitely. So, like I was mentioning, for us, or rather for me, it started being a tough journey towards the end of 2019, actually early 2019, because I was in one of the media houses, and what happened is, I think media started struggling since early 2019. And it was what it was, and there was no income, and I had to terminate that unwillingly. So you can imagine going for months without pay. Then by the time you're deciding to go off air and deciding this is not working, so basically you don't have any money. And the side hustle, okay, not the side hustle, the main business that I have is music PR. So, and also it's a shaky industry on its own, because in Kenya we really lack structures. Most people or most artists do not understand why I need a music publicist. So actually business was here and there. You get a client, you don't get a client. So what I see now, I think it was a blessing in disguise, because I got a moment of really going under, if I can say under. I experienced all those emotions Mary is talking about. Why did I have to? Because I was at a previous media house and I did the move where guys move. And I cannot blame myself, because we all yearn for greener pastures. And it turned out it wasn't as green as it would, you would have thought. But there was a moment, there's no money, you have no income at all. And if you're a family person, by then the PR company that we run it with my partner. So where all of you are relying on this income that is not so stable. So you end up exhausting the little that you had saved, and where you have bills to run and pay, and living in Nairobi is so expensive. My mom says, unakula mfuko kama mhindi. Literally you buy everything, because you don't even have a shamba. You buy food, you buy everything. So it was really tough. And I think that time, I don't know if it's depression or something, it was really tough. Then I got an opportunity and I got a job, which was a savior, but it was a startup. And slightly before COVID, slightly, the employer was like, our goals are not merging, our vision is not working. And I was like, cool, it's fine. But then I was able to put myself together when it comes to finances. But again, it was still shaky. Then COVID happened, so we are there. But now, because I went literally under that time when I didn't have any income, I think now I'm more stable, and I know what to expect. I know how to plan. I'm a little worried because I don't know, honestly, what to expect. But I think that experience prepared me.
Now, Agnes, when you were at rock bottom,
yeah,
what kind of emotions? You mentioned emotions. What was going on through your mind?
I used to, first of all, it was self-blame, because I really blamed myself so much. Why did you have to go? Before I came to terms with the fact that it was growth, because honestly, it grew my brand from a point to another. Before I got to the point of looking at the positive side, I really beat myself so hard. Why did you have to go? You couldn't have stayed there, you know, it was so bad that I remember I wasn't sleeping the whole night. I was tossing and turning and thinking, what can I do? How can I be able to turn around this situation? Do I still go back and be on air and look for money in other ways that I can for it when I'm on air? But again, remember and I'm an entertainer, because I used to do an entertainment show. So when you're there, you have to entertain people, you have to smile, you have to have energy. But when things are not working, and that's another thing with us people who are in front of the screens, if things are not working in other places, it will be clearly visible. So for me, I was like, it was not, but before I cried a lot. I remember I used to cry a lot. And that's the time you realize your colleagues, they're not your friends. The people who are in your life are the people who are close to you, who will understand what exactly is happening, which is what most people are experiencing right now.
And so Agnes, what was it that you held on to lift you up?
Honestly, I can say it's the support system that I have, because I have a very supportive partner who had to tell me, okay, it is what it is, you did this, and we had all agree, because when you're in a kind of family setup, any move that you make, if you guys have merged your income, it will affect the family in one way or another. So before you make any career move or any financial move, you have to discuss it. So like, we had agreed on this, it turned out how it turned out, and it was all for good, honestly. No one makes a move expecting anything negative. Okay, at the back of my mind, I knew this could go either way, but honestly, I didn't expect it to go that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Agnes, a pause there. Mary, are these stories familiar?
Absolutely. That is very familiar. She brought up one of the other things that happens to people about blaming themselves. it's very closely associated with feeling ashamed that I can't provide for myself. And then we end up in this spiral of negative thoughts. I wish I could have. What if I could have? What if it was me who did this? I could have done this better. It's a spiral of a series of very negative thoughts. And unfortunately, for some people, these can lead to depression, which is one of the things that we treat. It can also lead to anxiety when people are worried. You heard her say that she was tossing, she couldn't sleep at night. So that means that she's worried and she can't stop her mind from thinking all these things. So that's another thing that we also treat, which is anxiety. The other thing that we are also very concerned about as mental health professionals is the issues of these negative thoughts and emotions spiraling to suicide or violence at home. So that is also something that we have seen spiking. And money can be a trigger. People don't realize this, but money can be a trigger for physical violence. Because when you go through all these things that she has described, if no one is there to help you to understand what is going on, which is what we do, it can end up in an environment where people are abusing each other, people are verbally aggressive, people are physically aggressive with each other, and that is how we end up reading on the news, reading in the media, in the newspapers, or seeing on the TV or radio that someone hacked someone else to death, or someone took their own life. Those are the things that end up happening, but it has been a long journey up to that point.
Okay.
And it's just that nobody intervened.
Okay, Mary, we'll come back to you. Stay on the line. We also want to hear some tips from you. But now, do you struggle to make savings? Well, here are a few psychological tricks to help you out.
Saving trick number 1 is to avoid social media. It seems like every time we go on Facebook, Instagram, or any other social media platform, we are bombarded by ads. From workout clothes to the hottest new toy, we are being exposed to just as much sponsored content as the pictures and videos we actually want to see. Besides being terrible for our productivity, these apps are causing us to spend significantly more money, which erodes our chances at saving money. Saving trick number 2 is to use automatic deductions. For those of us who had no control over their spending, automatic deductions will work wonders. If you are unfamiliar with automatic deductions, they work in the following way. Whenever you get paid, a portion of your pay is withheld from going into your main bank account. Typically, people will set up a savings account that the money is routed into, which in some cases is not accessible to allow the money to continue to compound. Saving trick number 3 is to imagine your future rich self. Sure, spending $5 on a Starbucks coffee doesn't seem like a big deal. But what if I told you that $5 could turn into more than $100 by the time you retire? You might change your mind, right? The next money saving trick is to imagine your future rich self. Every time you consider a new purchase, no matter how big or small, ask yourself if spending this money will make you closer or further away from achieving your future rich life. Saving trick number 4 is to sleep on big purchases. Sleep allows you to save money in 2 separate ways. Firstly, without proper sleep, your decision-making capabilities diminish and the chance of riskier monetary behavior arises. So that car you would not normally consider buying may end up in your driveway. Secondly, sleep allows you the time to contemplate big purchases. Take the evening to sleep on large expenditures and allow your unconscious mind to process the information related to the purchase and then analyze it while you're dreaming. Saving trick number 5 is to use only cash. One of the best money saving tips is to only spend cash. Whether you're buying groceries or a new phone, spending cash makes us notice the monetary effects of our actions. This is because as we are paying, we are physically handing over money and we see the depletion in our wallets. Whereas when you use a credit or debit card, the potential to spend seems almost endless. Additionally, if you don't want to break a big $50 or $100 bill and you have to lug around loads of change, you may just avoid purchases altogether, allowing you to save more money than you ever could when relying on credit cards. Saving trick number 6 is to calculate the cost in hours. The second to last tip is to convert the cost of your purchases into work hours. For example, if you make $20 an hour at your job, then buying that new $100 t-shirt is really 5 hours of your time. Ask yourself, is that shirt really worth 5 hours of slaving away at my job? When you begin to see your purchases in this light, you'll become more conscious of how much a personal investment it was to earn this money, making you think twice before spending frivolously and ultimately allowing you to save more money over time. Saving trick number 7 is to generate more income. The truth is, your ability to save is restricted by how much you earn. If you currently make minimum wage, then saving a lot of money will be next to impossible, and the only way to improve this situation is to find ways to increase your income. For some, this may be picking up another part-time job, doing freelance work, or increasing your skills to allow you to earn a higher hourly wage. Personally, I've been able to triple my income over the last few years by completing my master's degree and getting my CPA designation. But I know accounting isn't for everyone, so find what works for you, and with this increase in income and the previously mentioned savings tips, you'll have more money than you'll ever know what to do with.
Okay, so those are dollar saving tips, quite useful. But we also have shilling saving tips with my guest here in the studio, Nyangi, in a moment. But first, to you, Martin. Now, we had, the sad journey from Agnes. And I wonder, will your program just be about successful entrepreneurs, or are there tears along the way?
Exactly. So it's a very comprehensive program. It's like I had said earlier on, we are really highlighting the losses. Like in the case of Agnes, her losing a job in the media industry, that was a huge loss for her. But she managed to find a soft landing by getting a job with an agency where they also parted ways. So it's more of, we start highlighting from your worst. What happened? What is your biggest loss? What story do you have behind you? And then what motivated you to get into now the session where we call lessons. What lessons did you learn from your losses? So you tell us through that. And then now we eventually get into your aspirations. What is it that you intend to achieve and how do you intend to get there? So I can say it's a 360 show, not only highlighting the wins, but we start from the losses. We understand the lessons that you pick up and the wins that you celebrate after success comes, if it comes.
Okay, Martin, in 10 seconds before you go, can you remind people where to catch you, how to reach out to you?
Exactly. So Tuzidi na Hustle is the name of the show. Tuzidi means let's keep being persistent. Tuzidi na Hustle premieres this Sunday on NTV 3 p.m. That's East African time. And it's a fan show. It's a very collective show. You can find me across social media handles, Martin Kemathi _ on Instagram, Martin M. Kemathi on Twitter, and Martin M. Kemathi on Facebook as well. Okay. Same time, I have a show on NTV Teen Republic, which airs every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's a lifestyle magazine show. You can catch me there as well.
Hey, we Martin, umejiuza sana.
Your weekend is packed.
So, that's a free commercial for you. Thank you very much indeed, Martin. Have a good day, keep safe, and we'll catch up with your show on Sunday. Now, we have been asking you, what have you been doing to stretch your money as far as it can go? And here are some of your comments. This one is from Odhiambo Isabella. You can only stretch what you have. Okay, but I want to know, even that what you have, how do you stretch it further? Jijenge Nyumba, you say, which money? Okay, pesa kwanza hakuna. What are we stretching here? Is it full of us? If there's no money, we have no money. If people reach that point of boiling stones, you can imagine the situation. Haya, nimekusikia kabisa. Wambugo, there is no money to stretch. Okay, sawa, people are really broke. Wamesota wote. Kakira Harrison amesema. Okay, if you've just joined us this morning, we are looking at the impact of COVID-19 on our money. And we're asking you, what are you doing to stretch the little that you have as far as possible? A lot of your responses are, we don't have the money in the first place. So my question then is, what are you doing for money without money? Okay, and with me is John Nyangi from the Institute of Public Finance. We also have Agnes in our 5th floor studio. She's a media personality and a music publicist. We also have Daniel Ndirango from the Institute of Public Finance, who'll be speaking to us in a minute, and also a clinical psychologist. Her name is Mary Kitaka. But first, the government's planned expenditure in the 2020-21 financial year exceeds the amount it hopes to collect in revenue, which stands at 841 billion shillings, a slight drop from the 843 billion shillings in the previous financial year. And it comes at a time when some of Kenya's loans are due. The National Treasury plans to borrow some more to address the revenue shortfall, as Alex Mwangi reports.
To come up with realistic solutions, economists use models that at times hold all things constant and also look at scenarios with various variables. The COVID-19 pandemic has created a scenario which can only be described as being outside the models that many economists have been using to make their economic projections.
As we roll out the post-COVID-19 economic recovery strategy, we remain committed to gradually lowering the fiscal deficit to shilling 768.8 billion, or 6.1% of GDP in the financial year 2021-22, and further to shilling 570.4 billion, or 3.6% of GDP by 2023-24.
Depressed economic performance this year, with an economy forecast to grow by 2.5%, down from a projection of 5.4%, will suppress revenue. Treasury hopes to plug the fiscal deficit by leaning more on domestic borrowing. Treasury is keenly cognizant of the environment it is working in, which is unprecedented.
This is a very special budget because it's coming at with the background of global recession as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. You are aware trade, investments, capital, tourism, all sectors have been gravely affected.
With the 2020-2021 national budget now out, it opens a new chapter for the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Planning, Ukur Yatani, in that he is going to be managing the country's finances during a pandemic. Without doubt, this is going to be an arduous task and one which is also hopefully likely to be filled with lessons. Alex Mwangi, NTV.
Mr. Ndirango, let me come back to you about this debt situation. When you're in debt, is it wise to borrow more?
Well, of course not. But in our case, you've seen that even from the projections that we've analyzed earlier, is we most likely will borrow to pay some other debt. Because as much as the CS talked about fiscal consolidation, which is continuously reducing the level of budget deficit, our expenditure are significantly higher than the amount we can collect. And if we want to keep our services running, then it means that we have to get those resources from somewhere. Our taxes remain very low. Our revenue collection does not meet the target. So what does that mean is that we have to get resources from elsewhere. And that's why the government has adopted some of these measures and also pushed the debt ceiling to 9 trillion because we were approaching, very fast. It's also important to note that of the thresholds that are, that have the standard thresholds that are put to control debt, we've broken 4 out of 6 thresholds. So that means that we are approaching towards, a very risky situation whereby we won't be able to meet our debt obligations. But so far, we've not defaulted on any. But because of how this year has turned out, that may not be the case as we move forward. So it's quite we are quite vulnerable right now as far as our finances are concerned. And as far as our, taxation, taxation measures are also concerned. Yeah.
And now, Ndirango, if you are in that position, what would you advise the Treasury or the government?
Right. Like I mentioned earlier, the only possible way out of this is to negotiate, to suspend some of the debt that falls due for 2020-2021 financial year. Especially the ones we owe to external partners, because it will free up some resources and that will allow us to at least be able to recover and invest some of that money in our economy locally. But as it stands, we cannot raise more on revenue because we cannot continually press the people who are already contributing, with this in these tough times. We can only ensure that we are saving some of that by suspending or at least pushing the payment for external debts to a later date to allow us to consolidate some of that amount and use it for our economy before we recover and repay back the next financial year.
Okay, one last comment before I let you go, Mr. Ndirangu. What does this mean for me as an ordinary Kenyan, for just ordinary people when we're in this kind of situation? Does that mean we should prepare for more taxes to come out of our pockets? Will we be able to take loans in the economy? What does it actually mean when the government is in that situation for us as ordinary people?
Well, the government cannot introduce any tax measures that they have not introduced yet. But it's good to be alive to the fact that we do not have a lot of money to finance a lot of expenditures. So there are some programs that the government anticipates, especially I think based on the conversations earlier on universal health coverage, because there's also a lot of growing pressure and need for the health services, because also for distress and other conditions that comes with these situations. The government might not be able to roll out the programs that it had anticipated earlier. There are also some programs that are in the current budget because we won't be able to meet our revenue targets. That means that those programs will either be carried forward and some of those projects will not be implemented. But certainly there are some of the programs that you anticipate that will not be able to meet at all. So it's good to just be alive to the fact that some of the development expenditure that we intend to incur, we will not be able to do that because we do not have enough resources to cover all that.
Thank you, Mr. Ndirangu. Now, to you, Bwana Nyangi, for those of us with the zero level knowledge of economics, can you break this down using a domestic scenario, yani kwa nyumba ya baba na mama na watoto? Where is the Kenyan government? What options? If this was a domestic budget in terms of a domestic situation at home, what would it look like in a home environment?
First of all, in a situation like this, there's what we call market economics. Market economics is where we assume that the forces of demand and supply will balance the economy. That is, what will be brought in the market is what the consumers want, and the consumers will go pick and pay for that. So we assume that the market economics will balance that. But in a situation like this, markets are not going to work. Markets are not going to assign resources efficiently. Therefore, what is required is extraordinary measures. As they say that tough times require for tough choices and tough measures to be taken. So the first thing is to do the priority list. That what is important at this particular time? What is it that really we need for us to survive? Because at this time, it's like survival mode. We have to reduce all unnecessary expenditures and only direct our very limited resources to those that are really, really necessary.
What kind of things would this be? Maybe put a hold on expensive infrastructure?
No, number one, in a household level, for example, we can say like rent. That is a basic need. Housing, I mean, place to shelter your family. Food, yeah. Then you have to health care. You have to look at if maybe it's a business that you are continuing. What are those things that you need? I think to start with, list all the things that you need. You need electricity bills. You need electricity. You need, for example, you need water. You need products. If it's maybe you run, let's say you're running a salon like news, you need some products to do the hair. You will need workers to help you there. So you need some, maybe you have GoTV there to pay. You have internet, Wi-Fi to pay. So you list all the things that you need. And then now on the one side, then cost them. How much is that expenditure? Like we are seeing the government, that is their total expenditure. So you have a total expenditure for all the things, the GoTV, all the things I've said. 50,000. And then, what is your income? You indicate also your sources of income. Like the government is indicating, we'll have this from ordinary revenue, from corporate tax, from pay as you earn, all that. Then you have, it comes to 30,000. Your expenditure, 50,000. So the difference is 20,000. Then now you ask yourself, this is now the deficit. Like the government is saying that this is the fiscal deficit. The balance between what we need to spend and what we have, our income. Then now what do? You go back to your list and say, which ones that I really need during this time? Do I need maybe Wi-Fi during this time? You consider. If your business really does not require Wi-Fi to go, then you can remove that. Rent, how do I do with the rent? Maybe you can negotiate with the landlord that the business is not very good. Can you give me some time? Yeah. Maybe the landlord can give you allowance, like we are saying that Kenya also need to negotiate with the guys who have given us money. That you see, we are in this difficult time. Can we pay this money? Then the 900 billion. Can we pay maybe half of it next year so that we can have some free space, some fiscal space to meet some of our obligations? Then, as you list all that, you can find that it comes down, maybe up to 40,000. So you have a balance, you have reduced the balance to now 10. So how can I fill now this gap? Then maybe you have some savings somewhere that you had saved when the economy was good. And that's what I'm saying, when the economy is good, when you're making more, save more, because difficult times might come. So you can go back to your savings and do what? And get some savings and plug and to fill that gap. Or maybe you need to borrow. You also look at, you can fill that gap by borrowing. Where are we going to borrow? Maybe, can I go to KCB? Can I go to Equity Bank and get some credit there? But again, the government is now also borrowing. You are going to meet with the government in Equity Bank, seeking for credit, and this household or this small business also seeking credit from the same.
What does that mean? That
means the risk now, the lender will assess your risk and tell me, between me and the government, I'll be riskier. So the bank will, they say, risk averse.
So better to lend to the government, you know the money will never disappear.
Yeah. Than to me, because they know the economy is not good. We're going to give Nyangi this money, and this money, he might not be able to repay the loan. So this might be bad debt. So what they do, they will prefer lending to the government.
So borrowing therefore becomes expensive?
It becomes expensive, and the access to credit for household and small business also becomes a challenge. A concept in economics we call crowding out effect, where now the government will send the small business and those out of the market.
Serikali inataka pesa.
Serikali inataka pesa. So and you can see the trend in our economy has been growing. The government, the banks have really wanted to lend to government. Government is borrowing from, and they're increasing their domestic borrowing. They're borrowing largely from the market. And therefore, the banks also therefore profit. They say this is easier to lend 20 billion to government or 100 billion once, and I'm dealing with one person, than to lend 5 million, 2 million.
So Nyangi, if going to the banks, you're competing with government or much more attractive customers,
yeah.
Where then do you turn to?
Now, here comes, the government has made like the 3 billion seed capital for small businesses. Then that's where now the small businesses should consider now the offer made by the government. Instead of going to the bank to get this credit that is high, look at the friendly one, like the one in government. And this is where now government, you should also manage this one very well, like the 3 billion credit capital for the small businesses. Because that one, the government is understandable, the repayment rate is fairer, and also the conditions are not very tough. So, and also there are other donors. This is a time also we are asking for development partners who are helping to jumpstart those small
For economies. Us, the equivalent is what, relatives or rather?
That is one relative. And if you can lend your brother, if you have, this is a time that we have to go even help each other. Like in Kenya, we need to help each other. If you have some extra income and you see your brother, your sister, your mother, your friend, your neighbor is struggling, this is the time we can lend a hand to each other. As even we are asking the government to do this, the development partners to do this, we have also to come back to ourselves. What can we do to my brother, to my mother, to my aunt, to my neighbor, so that we can recover and be each one's keeper.
Thank you, Nyangel. I want to come back for for a few more tips, especially in terms of managing debt. Mary, let me turn to you now. You'd mentioned that in terms of how we relate with money and our emotions with money, what are your tips or what are your experiences in that region, how we handle money and our emotions?
The first thing is we need to be aware that we are capable of these emotions. As human beings, all of us experience these emotions at some point, and there are a wide range of these emotions. But at the moment, there are some that we'll experience more than others. For example, I mentioned fear, and I mentioned things like feeling ashamed, things like feeling sad that I lost my job. So when we are feeling these feelings, it's okay, it's normal. It's a normal state of affairs for the environment that we have at the moment. What we do with those emotions then is the issue. If we can be able to acknowledge that we are feeling them, then we will not have a bad relationship with money. But the minute that we don't know that these things are happening, or we deny that these things are happening in our bodies, then that's when we make bad decisions. For example, I could make a bad decision out of fear. I could make a bad financial decision out of fear. Yeah. I could maybe withdraw all my savings out of fear, or I think that's the best example, especially in this time, where you go and overspend because you're worried, or you don't know what's going to happen in the future. So let not emotions be triggers for bad decisions.
And I wonder whether
yes.
I wonder whether in the course of your work you're coming across people who need help because of their debt situation.
Absolutely. People who are in debt are feeling all these emotions at a very high intensity, and they're very susceptible to making bad decisions, which can lead them into digging themselves into even deeper debt. Yeah, they're not thinking rationally. At the point where you feel fear, you're unable to think rationally. So you find that maybe they start to borrow more, even more than they already had. Yeah. And that's when you find that they are trying to run away from this debtor, or this person they owe. They are trying to change their phone number, because they feel that someone is after me because I have not paid my debts. And then you get into bad books with the government. So it spirals into all these really, really bad decisions.
Okay.
So what we recommend, just to answer your question, is if you feel that you're feeling overwhelmed by this situation, whether it's debt, whether it's the COVID situation, we really recommend that you seek help. And there's no shame in seeking help. We all need help at some point in our lives. It's not a show of weakness. So if you feel that you are feeling overwhelmed, reach out and get some help, so that you're able to recover from something that is less tragic in terms of your finances.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Agnes, let me come to you now. You have passed through quite a journey, as you shared. I wonder, what's your relationship with money, or what was your relationship with money?
My relationship with money, like it has been, it's frenemy. We are friends and enemies at the same time. But one conscious decision that I made is to educate myself and to learn more about money, especially how can it work for me, and also how can I maximize on my incomes, if I may say, and how do I save? Because honestly, our culture, we don't teach people about money. And I was turning 30 the other day, and I really had again this season of what did I do with my money in my 20s? Because I come from a background where I really honestly fear poverty, and I fear being vulnerable because of lack of money, because it is not a good experience. And because I think for me it's more deeper, because I have seen it bring serious consequences, especially to my dad, because he really had a difficult time with money, and what Mary was talking about, it ended to him committing suicide. So for me, I'm really cautious about money, and I know what can draw me to get to that point. So I had to educate myself. So in my late 20s, I really started reading about money. How do I save more? How do I work with bad debt, good debts? How do I reduce those good debts? So I came to a point of, let me educate myself when it comes to money. So that is where we are right now. I'm still on a journey. I'm reading books, I'm listening to people, but more what I'm doing is discipline, because you could read all that, but if you don't apply, because knowing is one thing, but applying, making sure that, I saw one of the tips is making sure you have automated deductions, but in the nature of our industry, you're paid via maybe cash, M-Pesa or whatnot. How do I make sure that I pick that 20% and save? How do I make sure that 10% is for my personal brand and how I look? How do I make sure the 70% is for the bills and what I need to run my household and everything? Okay. So there's the knowing and there's the discipline of applying.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Agnes, for sharing that. Let me turn to you, Bona Nyangi. Let's start with debt. For people who are in debt, especially personal debt, what are your tips of trying to get out of that? Because I know people are really, really struggling. You've borrowed on all your mobile money sources, and you maxed out everywhere, and you haven't got that much income coming in. What are your tips?
To begin with, they say ati dawa ya deni ni kulipa hiyo deni.
Sio deni.
Sio deni. That you have debt. The easiest and most efficient way of getting out of that debt is to clear that debt. But you need the income to clear that debt. But you're in a situation where you don't have this income. Then, to begin with, you need to negotiate with your lender. Who lent you this money? And that's why we are saying that even the government negotiate. So even down to the micro level, that to start with, negotiate with your lender. That is why you're supposed to have a good relationship, communicating when you are facing challenges, when you're facing difficulties, when it is not working well. Communicate, visit your lender, if it share.
Let them know what's going on.
Yes, and most of them are experts in managing money and also in investments. So they will give you more tips. But now you are in this situation. What you do first thing is that visit your lender and show what you are going through, what your business is going through, and how you are facing difficulties. And you need to restructure the repayment, because you have to repay. It cannot clearing it or forgive.
And restructuring means?
Restructuring means that if you are restructure repayment, if you are paying monthly and you are paying a certain amount, then you can do it by monthly, that is after 2 months, or you can do it even lesser installments. If you're paying like 10,000 monthly, and how much are you able to pay? You can say, I'm not able to do the 10 because of this time, but I am able to do 5. It's okay if I can do 5, and I'm not able to do for the 1 month, Am I able to do the 2 months? Can we do this one in 2 months? Number two, after having that negotiation and for restructuring, you have to manage your expenditure. You have to manage your expenditure and minimize wastages.
How do you do that?
You do that, like I had said earlier, by getting your priority list right.
In terms of your income, in terms of your...
Yes, and the things that you really need to survive. Some economics have said the situation we are in, that is wartime. So they say that we use what we call wartime economics management to process. That when you are in war, there are things that you only need.
This is the bare minimum you need to survive. That's what you need to hold on to.
Yes. Maybe you need only gunpowder for ammunitions, and maybe the soldiers in the front line to make sure they are motivated and they have food to continue the battle on the battlefront. So what you need to be on the battlefront, those minimum things.
Everything else you cut off.
You cut off. You cut off. And as you cut off, you also make sure you use it economically. You know, some people use too much. Other guys have said that they also even eat only when we are hungry. If maybe, for example, you are doing several meals, you can cut on that.
And so if you're lucky to have a little saving that you have and now you've run out of, is it time to turn to your savings in terms of using it?
This is the time to turn to your savings. This is the time to turn to your savings rather than going to borrow. You know, you should only borrow to invest. That is the principle, that you borrow to invest so that you can get in return from your investment to service your debt. Don't borrow to consume. Because when you borrow to consume, a time will come to repay. And you consumed, there is no return on what you consumed. What are you going to use to service your debt? But if you had your savings, then you get your savings and do what? And spend during this difficult time as you cushion yourself. And also, there's what we would call vulnerability. You don't become very vulnerable by borrowing and exposing yourself to many lenders, and a time might come you are not able to service your debts. And you'll be blacklisted in this CRB, in this, even next time when there's opportunity where you can borrow now to invest, where the right time to invest, this is not a very good time to invest. You find that you are blacklisted, you're in CRB, you can't access credit.
So, Nyangi, thank you. We'll come back to also talk about savings. But first, we noticed a lot of you have been learning new recipes during this pandemic season. New delicacies are being served on your table, and we wanted to be part of that journey. So we partnered with Pishi.co.ke to bring you a weekly segment called #Pishi Home Chef. How does it work? Well, all you have to do is cook a meal, any meal, or a meal that will give you as a challenge. Record a video or take photos of that, post it on any social media using the #Pishi Home Chef. And if we like what you make, then you could become Pishi Home Chef of the Week. This week's challenge was cooking chicken the best way you know. And Chimo, this is with this week's Home Chef. Let's have a look. Okay, now let's look at life post-COVID. Let me start with you, Agnes. In terms of business and in terms of personal financial management, what has COVID-19 taught you?
One, it has taught me it's very possible to live with the bare minimum. I mean, like what you basically need to survive. Healthcare, food, shelter. Clothing at this point, it's not even as important because you have clothes that you have and you don't even to get new clothes. So that's one, that life is not that complicated. I mean, you need the bare minimum to survive, and also that we can adapt to change as it comes, because we have no option. We have to adapt to this new normal, which is gonna go on for a very long time. And also the importance of embracing change, especially when it comes to businesses, because right now most businesses are marketing digitally, or what we call online. And also the same with our PR company, the PR business. When an artist comes and pays us, the main thing we are focusing on right now is digital. So there is the need to embrace change as it comes. And also I'm learning the importance of investing in good relationship in your life, in friends, or whether it's your family, the support system. And right now I would want to mention, there's a group called the Scribes, and when Mary mentioned about, I don't know if it's Mary or Yangi, borrowing, like we have a kitty where, because right now, especially journalists, there are people who don't have an income at all, especially correspondents. And we have a kitty where if you really rock bottom, you can reach to one of the admins and we can come through, whether it's for food or whatever you need. So there's need to have a very strong support system, and this is not the time to have pride. This is not the time to say I cannot go back to my mother's house. This is the time to operate with what will work for you, for your sanity and for your mental health. So yeah, those are a few of the lessons.
Thank you, Agnes. Bonanyangi, now looking forward to post-COVID, a lot of businesses shut down. People will be looking to how do we raise our businesses up again, either if they crashed out. What would be your tips in terms of recovery for small businesses when this pandemic is over?
Yeah, it's true that some businesses will die forever. They may not survive post-COVID. And there's need that the owners rethink. One is there will be every tragedy comes with opportunities. So with this COVID, what are the opportunities that are embedded also in this pandemic? Like there are new businesses. For example, you see the products like the face masks, the hand washing systems, the tap and the sanitizers, the soaps. Yeah, all those are new opportunities that came together in this pandemic. So those guys who changed very fast, like others moved into those who are making clothes, like my fellow panelists have said that the clothes, sometimes now the wardrobe, the clothes are, some are asking where is the person who can wear me. So those guys, they realize that we do no longer have demand for these clothes, but there is demand for masks. So they changed and they went into producing masks. So the new opportunity, you change very fast.
What are the lessons that we need to carry into life after COVID for small businesses?
For small businesses, one is that rigidity, you should not be rigid. Number two, you have to be connected. ICT has become very important, especially in this lesson, that you can do business while even you are from your house or from your business premises. You do not have to travel. You can do deliveries. You can deliver products. You can deliver your goods to your customers without you maybe opening even the shop. You can even
so online presence is key?
Yes. And even in the back of your backyard, what can you do? This is the time even of thinking of some small productions and some small industries at home. Like I've seen my neighbor is producing some bread.
From the house?
Yeah, and scones. So he's saying we have this cooker, we were in the house, what can we do? We can produce scones now here to serve our community. So if such opportunity, what can you do even from all those that you have in the house? The neighborhood, how can you make businesses within your neighborhood? And also as your business, how do you keep your customers? Like you have to constantly keeping a good relation, checking on them. How are you doing? I'm just calling to check on how you're doing and also inform you that we are still offering our services, our products are still available, and we have improved. Even we have taken some measures to comply, and we even have deliveries. You can order and we can deliver to you. So that is another tip. That
what about employees?
For employees, my advice would be to the employers, first, try as much as you can to keep those employees. If you can see how you can change even the model, you can use them differently. Maybe those who are making marketing now, if they can do sales, they can adjust a little bit and do sales and do some deliveries. Those can ride and do some deliveries. Yes, but it's good that they're part of your family. And for those employees, what else can you do? Like we can see those who are doing Uber or who are doing some business attacks, they are now doing foods, they're selling groceries.
To reinvent yourself and...
Yeah, you can see many cars now, even places where you didn't have, because people are at home. You can imagine all the students who are in school, they are now at home, over 8 million of them. And that means consumption.
Okay.
Where is the demand? You know, you have to follow where is the demand at this time. Like for now, people have gone into food, and you can see because it's an essential service, you can get them from wherever. You can get your fish from the lake, you can get your greens from there, and they can be delivered, and you can continue serving. So, and the other thing is you have to continue using scarce resources economically. That you minimize. This is what I will.
So that's a culture we need to carry across to life after COVID.
Even after COVID.
Yeah.
That when you have extra income, save it.
Right. Let me turn to you, Mary. Now, a lot of people are writing to us, and indeed a lot of people are saying, I have no money. I just absolutely have no money. The issue is, how do you cope with life and maintain your mental well-being when you know you're absolutely broke, really stretched to the limit?
Yeah, that's a very difficult situation to deal with. It's going back to the basics of family. As a psychology community around the world, we have been very disturbed by this issue, this word called social distancing. I would imagine the people who started off talking about social distancing did not know what we know. We know that social distancing is not it. It's actually physical distancing. So I also pray that our media in Kenya will encourage people maybe to do more of the physical distancing, but not of the social distancing. What I'm trying to say is that family right now is very, very important. Our support system is very, very crucial for your mental well-being. So please don't social distance. Maybe you may physically distance from yourself from someone, just, you know, in terms of the COVID virus. So it's to fall back to your support system, your family, your friends, to be able to hold you up when you're really, really struggling right now. So that can be that they'll hold you up in finances, or they'll even just hold you up emotionally because maybe you've lost your job and you need someone to talk to you and to be able to understand your situation. Because sometimes we can lack empathy. When someone is struggling, we don't want to actually look to them and be able to be of help.
Okay.
So let us be our brothers keepers. For those who are really, really down and they're struggling, let's support them.
Okay. Mary, thank you. Maybe a closing thought from you. We're coming to the end of our show. Nyangi, just a quick comment on what would be your last thought to SMEs, entrepreneurs?
First of all, I want to direct this to the government, that create some space for the SMEs in the credit market. That as they
access to capital.
Yes, as they come, don't send them out, don't crowd them out. Leave some space for the SMEs also to access credit for them to rebound back. Number two is that for the small businesses.
Just briefly, yeah.
For the small businesses, at the county level, negotiate with your county governments about the rates and the business permits.
All right.
And your customers. Keep them safe and keep them socially, like Mary is saying, don't physical distance, but don't social distance.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have 10 seconds, Agnes, as we come to the end. Have you made up with money now?
Still in the process. It's a journey. So yeah, but I can say I'm better now. So we are somewhere.
Mtakuja kuelewana.
We will. We have to. There's no option.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed, Agnes, and also Bonanyangi and Mary for joining us this morning. Now, as we close, did you know that it's important to have an emergency fund set aside to cover unexpected expenses? That emergency might be an unexpected car repair, maybe an expensive medical bill, or a sudden job loss. If you were to lose your job, you'd be thankful if you saved a good amount of money in your emergency fund to tide you over until you find a new job. Did you know that sometimes you'll have big expenses coming even if you're not too sure how much they'll be or when exactly they'll occur? To cover these, set up a sinking fund. Now, sinking funds are money you set aside for future known expenses such as taxes, holiday gifts, car repairs, home improvements, and other irregular costs. Did you know that one way to save money is by deleting your credit card numbers from your online accounts? Everyone loves the convenience of one-click shopping, but by unsyncing your account, you might consider your purchase, helping you save money. So that's a few tips. On Monday, Gladys Gashanja will be right here with Your World, looking into the gender gap and COVID-19. On behalf of my guests and the NTV team with me this morning, thank you very much indeed. Have a good weekend. Stay safe.